Hello everyone, I'm Mohsen from Microsoft Zero to Hero. We have another exciting session with Ricardo, and I hope this session is very good because in the backstage I talked with Ricardo. It's very interesting topic, as you know. Before to jump to Ricardo, let me share some my presentation and share some information about the Microsoft Zero to Hero and Microsoft Learn. Yeah, today we have Ricardo Covo about the LLM potential journey with the API actually. And we are Microsoft Zero to Hero. We cover a lot of topic about the Microsoft technology, Azure technology, data technology. Please join us to our social media or learning room. And as you know, we are work with closely with Microsoft Learn Community. Microsoft Learn Community is a collection of the data for learning, for ask your question from Learn Expert. You can join from aka.ms Microsoft Learn Community. And yeah, about the Microsoft build. The Microsoft build, the session is not, but the challenge is live. You can have a chance to give a Microsoft certificate exam voucher. Please join the Microsoft with Cloud Challenge. And the last slide is about our code of conduct. Be aware of other, be friendly and passionate, be welcoming and respectful, be open to all question and viewpoint, and be understanding of difference, be kind and considerate to other in the chat, in the voice. And as you know, the time is at Ricardo to stage. Hello, Ricardo.
Hello, how are you
How
doing?
are you? Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. And you?
I'm excited. Very good,
Ricardo,
thank you.
I enjoyed the topic of your presentation. I know about LLM, and I think we have a great session with you and learn more things with you, actually.
Yeah, so actually, this one in particular, I work as a consultant and I have to actually do timesheets.
Yeah,
And one day, one of my colleagues created this chat where I could say, "Hey, add some time to my project," like on a ChatGPT type of
mhm.
screen, and I was like really immediately curious about, well, what is the mechanism to have the LLM called API? And
Yeah,
that is how this talk was born. Like I figured, like if I was that curious, a lot of people must have been, and yeah, it's been received pretty well. So let's see. Hopefully, it's interesting to the people on this event.
great. All guys or participants can ask your question in the chat. And end of the session, I will share with Ricardo, answer your question. Yeah, Ricardo, stage for yours.
All right, so I did share my screen, but I think it's waiting for your approval. So I share the wrong.
Oh, I think Ricardo, instead of the at presentation living studio, I will wait for join again. For Ricardo, I think it's a bad UX from StreamYard. The presentation and Live Studio, both of them is near together. Sometimes this happen. Yeah,
My
Ricardo back.
apologies. Here.
Yeah. Before you join, I told about the user experience in the StreamYard. Leave a studio button and presentations near together. And
Yes,
sometimes,
and I did
yeah,
choose the wrong one.
yeah, okay.
I realized that I had changed the wrong screen, but when I went to change it, I apologize for that. So
No worry, no
here
worry.
we are now.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great. Let's just
all right. So my name is Ricardo Covo, and I'm a principal consultant on the app dev and modernization practice at Central Logic. We are a company based here in Canada, but we work in the United States and Europe as well. If you want to reach out, LinkedIn it's my preferred social media, so feel free to engage over there. So as I said in the preview, this talk started out of my curiosity to see how the LLMs can be augmented with APIs. So in here we're gonna go deep dive into the mechanics of how that happens. Um, so if I continue, so our agenda is I'm gonna do a quick overview of the environment, the things that I'm gonna be using. Then we'll cover some of the basic things, followed by a demo. Then the shot completion with tools, which include API functions, and then a demo. And finally, an assistant overview. This is a preview, something that is on preview right now, but it's like the next step in the evolution of this. Um, so the environment, I'm gonna use Azure OpenAI as my AI service. There's going to be a web API that is going to host the API calls that I'm going to use, and then there is a BS project. So let's go and start looking at some of these components. Um, so I have this resource created in Azure. This is an Azure OpenAI resource. It was created in East USA. And one of the things that is going to be interesting here for us is the keys and endpoints. So we're going to use these as an API. So this is going to be our endpoint, and here are the keys that I'm going to be injecting into my uh, my project to use this. So normally when you're working with this service, you want to go to the Azure OpenAI Studio, which I have here open. And once you're here, there's a couple things like a chat, completions, DALI. This is the assistance preview. But I do want to show you like the deployments that I have. So deployments are basically you deploy a model and you give it a name, and then when you access the through the API, you're gonna give it which deployment you're targeting. In this case, I have only one deployment, and it's a GPT 3.5 Turbo. It's more than sufficient for this demo, um, but you can have different names. So these different deployments, this name right here, the one that I'm highlighting, is something that we're gonna reference directly on our code. And then you have the chat, and here you can mimic a little bit. Let me make this a little bit bigger because I'm zoomed in. It looks a little awkward, but this is kind of like a setup that you would do for your chat, and we're gonna see how this translates into code. So you can, for example, say a system message, what your assistant look like, and some examples. Just a quick tip, you can come here and view the code, and then either in Python or I like C Sharp, so that's what I'm going to be demoing on. And it gives you like a quick start to your code. You can see here that this chat right here is targeting the deployment that I mentioned before, the GPT-35. I don't have others, so that's the only one that he has. So that's the Azure AI in terms of what we're using. Then I have a a API for time management, a mock API sort of. It's hosted in container apps, but what you need to know is that this is basically the endpoint, and I can do a get, and this will go and get me my a list of projects. In this case, I have 3 projects. Uh, but also I could do a post, and this what we'll do is based on the project ID is gonna add hours to it, and it requires a payload rate like this. So this is something that we're gonna be using. Um, our demo will looks like the simplest chat you've ever seen. It has the chat content will go here, and then you put your message down here, and it's gonna start a conversation. That's the code that generates that is a very simple Blazor application. I am referencing this particular package. Uh, if is the Azure AI OpenAI, and it's very simple. This is the chat area that I showed you. You just iterate through messages. Uh, the way that you display it is a little different if you're a user or the assistant. And then this is your input. So very simple. So it's already running. So I could show you this setup right here. So that's the environment. The 3 things that you need to be aware of: the Azure AI, the API that we're gonna eventually be consuming, and the the Visual Studio project. Right. So before we go into the code in the application, there is a few basics that I wanna um, tell you about. So there is a common, let's say, vocabulary that we're using. So there is the service. In this case, I'm gonna use Azure OpenAI. Um, Normally, what happens is you create a client on your code based on that service. There is the chat. It's just the chat that you're gonna be having. Each participant, there is different roles in the participants of the chat. The system is how you set up the system. This is the instruction that tells the assistant to behave in a certain way. The user role is the messages that the user will give. The assistant role is the responses from the assistant. And there is tool and functions, and basically if this determines that you need to call a function, it will say, well, there is a message from the tool um, with the role tool. We're going to be sending request messages that includes the role and the content. Uh, let's just remember that these services, even though they respond in natural language, they're not really smart. If you don't give it context, they're gonna go all over the place with the responses. So when we want to have a conversation, we always need to send the entire chat history so it has context. Um, Response message is what we receive back from the assistant, and it has some content, but also sometimes it has some indications, like some instructions, like you need to call, hey, we determined that you need to call some functions. So we're gonna see all of that in the code. So normally a chat conversation will go like this. A user will say, will start the whole conversation saying hi. Um, our application, what is going to send to the service on the first call, is first a message from the system, kind of setting the system up, and then the user comment. Um, the service may respond, "Hey, how can I help you?" Now that's gonna go to the user. Now the application is gonna send is the whole conversation, because otherwise you cannot guarantee there is like a nice response that flows with the conversation. So I need to send it all, and that one will result then in another response. So let's just go to a demo because that's a little bit more fun. So we talked about the parts that we have here. So we have the input and then the chat area. That's fine. So on the on the input, I could say submit, or I could say reset chat. So here, if I say reset, all I'm gonna do is clear the history of messages, and now when I submit, it's gonna be a brand new conversation. Um, the other one is send the prompt. So here's where we're gonna start getting interesting stuff. So the main thing when we initialize this page, we got some information from the configuration, the endpoint, and the API key I showed you on the app service. And then I'm initializing a client with the endpoint and the credential. And now this API client is ready for me to use. So that's very simple. So sending a prompt, what does it imply? It implies, well, in this case, I'm just adding the message to the list, so it's displayed in the UI. But then basically using the API client, I'm gonna get chat auto completion, and I'm gonna send it some options. We'll see what those options are in a second, but basically this is gonna give me a response, is a response from the assistant, and I'm just gonna add it to the message. Let's see what the completions, the options are. So it's a class. I'm giving it the deployment name. So remember, I highlighted this a couple times when I was on the Azure AI Studio. Then this is the message, the initial message, the system message. Now, to make it a little fun here, I said that this assistant is obsessed with cookies, wants to talk about it all the time. So the completions, this is the base. That's all you need to get started. But as the conversation grows, you want to add um, those messages into the options so you can send them back to the assistant. So that's it. Like if I say hello, yeah, for some reason, it's just talking about cookies. Now, if I ask about, can you give me my project list? Um, it's gonna just say something, but it's not really relevant. It doesn't have information about my projects. I want to add hours to a project. There's no way that this assistant could really know what I mean. So it's kind of going into its knowledge base and kind of um, trying to put some information out there. It's not really being useful. So to actually augment it in a way that it can be useful, we are going to use tools. So let's continue with this. So tools, it gives assistants access to tools. In particular, for this talk, we're going to talk about function calling. I'm going to define a function, and I'm going to tell the assistant, hey, this is one of the tools that you can use to respond to requests. So how that works is kind of the same thing. I'm gonna say what projects do I have, right? So I'm gonna set it up like I did before, but then I'm gonna set up. I'm gonna configure a set of tools that give the service indications of things that can augment the the response. So in this case, let's say that we have a tool, a function called get projects. So the service would have identified that you can call that, and the response is not going to be something that you show to the client. It's going to say, hey, you need to call functions, and then you in your code call the functions and give a response to that function. Now, when the system tells you to um, to call a function, it will give you pretty much a correlation ID, which you later send in the response, just saying, "Hey, this response is a response to what you asked me to do." Then the assistant can respond in natural language to the client. So uh, notice that there were a couple back and forwards here before we got back to the client. And it's because the service told me I needed to execute that function. Now, how I execute it is up to me. Uh, Obviously, we're working towards calling an API, but I'll show you some baby steps first. Okay, so let's go back to the demo. And I actually have things built up in a way that I can change branches here. And I'm just going to do local function calling first. Let's wait a little bit for it to change. Okay, so I'm going to rebuild it. All right, so let's go back to prompt. I change it a little bit first, and then I'm going to process the chat completion. So get process chat completions is changing a little bit. Let me show you here what is happening. So it's still this. I've changed the system message to be a little bit more specific. I'm saying you help employees fill out their timesheets, and check this out. Here, I'm setting, hey, you have this tool called get projects functions. All right, so how do you uh, do your tool choice automatically? So let them select it. So get project functions is a class that has this long name, uh, chat completion functions tool definition. I'm gonna say that the name of this is get projects, and you're gonna see why that is important in a second. And I need a description, and a description is almost like a prompt. Like you need to think about the best way to define your function, so the chat can determine that is going to be using it. So in here, part of the setup of my chat is going to be my system message, but also all those tools that are going to give it some extra power. This is kind of the same. So the other thing that is going to happen here is that when I get a response, so I'm doing the same call, get chat completion async, but the finish reason can be, let me see if I can do this. Speaking. So the finish reason here could be one of many things. It could be, let me look at the definition of this and see if, all right. So it could be stop, which means there's nothing to do. You can present the call. There is a token limit, reach value. So there is a few uh, description here, but um, the one that we're looking for is called tools call. And basically this tells me whether I have to call a tool or not. And if I do, I'm gonna do it. So this is part of merging the messages, but then I'm gonna process my tool call in this function right here. So this function is gonna say, hey, does my function that is the function that you're telling me to call is the name as the get project function name, and if it is, then do something. Now the something that I'm doing here is just statically creating a list of projects and sending it back to the tool message. So let's put some breakpoints, one here, and then one important one will be here. And let's run this. Let me just rebuild because right now the DLLs are probably from the last run that I did. So I'm gonna run this. All right. So it started right here. All right. So I'm gonna say hello, because this is a simple greeting. Like there isn't a lot of stuff. Let me just show you what. Oh, so it doesn't show very well, but when I go and see the finish reason right now, there is something that says stop. Let me see if I can do it. You can see it there. It says stop. So stop means there's nothing else you need to do. So I'm not gonna go and I don't need to call my function. So I'm just gonna let it go. It said, how can I assist you today? And I can say, uh, can you show me my available projects, please? I'll say please just in case. Now, if I go back into this, you can see there that it's telling me, hey, you need to do some calls. So I'm just gonna add it to the tool history message and then add it to the options that my message have. But notice that I have this in a for each. This is because you can get instructions to call multiple functions. But for now, I'm just gonna go in here and show you that the function call, if I go into the name, it is get projects. So it determined that you need to call that function. Now the execution of the function, I could do whatever. In this case, I'm just deciding to do um, this. So notice that I'm gonna be sending a JSON into the assistant. The assistant then is gonna take that and it's coming back again. And the finish reason in this case is gonna be stop. There's no more calls to do. So even though I sent a description back with just a JSON, it kind of puts this natural language around it. Like, sure, here are your available projects. Um, let me know what else I can help you with. So this is an example of setting up a function that is executed locally. Now, in my next example, I'm just going to change that to actually make a call to the API. But I want to show you something here that's interesting. Uh, uh, can you tell me the current day? Okay, it came back. Um, so the current date is date. So the assistant doesn't really know what date is today. So that is a problem because eventually I want to say, hey, can you add 2 hours to Project Blue for today? So we're going to see how we fix that shortcoming. So let's see. So now I'm going to go here and change into API function call. And if you guys want access to this repository, my username is Ricardo Covo in GitHub, and this one is made public, so you can go and play with it. Uh, Um, all right, so I'm gonna build this, but in the meanwhile, I'm gonna show you some things. Um, so get projects, these remain the same. This is the definition of the function. I think I forgot to say the last time, this doesn't have any parameters. So I just set this up like this. So very nice and simple. Now the second function that I'm gonna add is called add hours to project. And what's happening here is this, I give it a name and I give it a description. It just adds hour to the project. Remember, you're sending this pretty much in every request, so you want to be efficient on how you select your prompt. It's going to save you some money. But this one in particular has some parameters. So this is really where some of the magic is going to happen. You're going to see how the assistant is actually going to determine what the parameters are. So some of the things that I want to send to this call is a project ID, the number of hours, the description, and the date. And I have to put descriptions for each one of those and types, and it will try to infer which ones are there. Hours, description, and entry date are required to be. Project ID needs to be required as well, but that doesn't matter too much. Now, another thing that is good to show here, so this is the call that actually deals with the tool call. Now in here I say, if the project name, if you're telling me to call get projects function, now I created an API wrapper here that actually posts, gets the project. So there's a base URL, and if I don't get a status code, I just say I send the status code as empty. Um, then the other one that I want to do, like if you're telling me to call add hours to project, then I actually need to send you the arguments. So the function call did not only determine which function to call, but which arguments are going to be um, appropriate for your call. And then I will call add hours to project. That one is fairly simple. I deserialize with the arguments into a model and then make a post. Uh, so let's see how that ends up working. Anything else here? No, I think that's about it. So I'm building again and now I'm running. All right. So, oh yeah, there was something I wanted to show. The options. There's two things that I'm doing here. I'm saying the current date is this. So that way I am setting context for the system, for the assistant on what that current date time is. And on the tools, I'm actually adding both tools to to the toolbox that this assistant is going to have. So it could either have get projects or add hours to project. So same chat, I'm just going to say um, list of projects, please. And before we go there, I want to remind you of uh, oh, it seems like it seems like I close Postman. So let me just open it. I want to remind you of the API call that we made. My computer is normally not this slow. I think it probably the streaming makes it a little bit more busy. So I'm gonna go to the playground here. Come on. All right, time management, get projects. Oh my God, this is pretty slow. So it is a get. It doesn't have any parameters, and it doesn't have. It is a get, so there's no body. So the response to this request should be a list of projects. Yep, so you can see there is a Phoenix, Griffin, and Kraken. Let's see how that works actually on the chat. So the chat is here. There's the chat right here. Projects, please. So the function decided that I needed to call get projects is what I need to call. So I go and this time I just execute the API through the wrapper. And if you see the response here, hopefully you can see that, but it is the three ones that I saw there. So I'm sending that back to the assistant saying this is my call, and it just shows it to me. Now I can say something like add 2 hours to Phoenix for today. So let's see what that does. So now the function call is gonna be add hours to project. You can see that there. But most importantly, if I go, let's just continue here. If you see the function called arguments, can you please see the arguments? Text visualizer is not showing them to me, so let's see if I can see it another way. So anyway, you can see here some interesting stuff. Even though I say add to project Phoenix, because it has all the context, it knows that the project ID is 1. Even though I say 2 hours in a word, it determined 2. I didn't do a description. I didn't add the description. So it actually made one up for me. Work on on Phoenix project. And then the entry date, because I gave it that context, it got the date from today. So that is pretty good. So it says 2 hours have been added to project Phoenix for today. So let's see if I get this right here. You can see that indeed they were added. Okay, so let's do another. I'm gonna say add 3 hours to Kraken for yesterday. Description is prepare for 0 to hero. So it's gonna be very similar. I'm gonna go here, and again, I really like looking at the arguments because even though I said Kraken, it determined project ID was 3 hours 3 description and entry day. I said yesterday, so it was able to calculate the day before. That is all because I gave it the context of the hours. So it's all good. It added that. Now, I have put a validation that you cannot add to the same project for the same day twice. So let's say add an hour to Phoenix for today. So in this case, the response actually is bad request. And I could have made a better error message coming out, but this is what I'm going to send to the assistant. I'm going to say, I tried to make this function call, I couldn't. And then the assistant is now translates that into some nice natural language. It says, apologies for the inconvenience, blah, 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 blah. So this is how you actually can enrich the LLM with your own API calls. And a couple things to remember is that you are in charge to making those calls. What you decide to do, whether if it's an API call or if it's a local code, that's actually all up to you. You can insert your logic accordingly. There was on Copilot Studio, there was an announcement on 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 build last week that makes this very easy. But there is a point where you want to move from Copilot Studio to actually build your own stuff. So knowing how things work on the back end is always beneficial. Yeah, so that is that. Let's see what else I have on here. All right, so it's gonna, I think we're here. So tools, we did this. Um, so a couple of things, APIs and SDKs are changing quickly. So be patient. There's going to be some frustration. Sometimes certain things only work on certain versions, and then your SDK has to match the API version. So make sure that you know which version support what and what you're looking for. Um, Optimizing the system prompts and functions is gonna save you money, so it's crucial. So think about them. There is a lot of information out there about prompts. And finally, I found that there's way more example on Python than there is on C Sharp. They've done a good job with this library, but um, everywhere you go, Python seems to be the first class citizen. There are some links that I use when learning about this. Let me see if I can copy. I'll copy these and put them on the chat. Um, and that's it. But before we go, I did want to show you the assistant. So I'm gonna go. Let's see, where am I going? I'm gonna go to the portal. Let's remove this guy here. And put them on the comments, maybe. So, I see some comments about the correct settings, and so I'll double check on that. So let me just show here on OpenAI Studio. So there's a feature called Assistance, and it's on preview, and it basically allows you to preset a lot of the things before you use it. So let me see if this decides to come up. All right, so you can see here Assistance preview. You go in there, and a lot of the things that we set up on code. So instructions is similar to the system message. So here is where you would say you're a helpful assistant, you help people with timesheets or whatever. But then you can have functions here. So instead of having them on the code, you set them up here. And it looks something like this, and you save them and they become available. So let me see here if I already set up one uh, in preparation. So assistant setup, choose system name, open an assistant. So the timesheet assistant. Now you will reference it when you instantiate the client, you're instantiating a different type of client, and you would use your assistant ID to do it. This would be the instructions in the functions. You can add one or more functions, and then you can have other tools as well. And again, you can see the code here in Python first class. It's a little bit different. So I did see a question about audio from Audio Rework Visions about the configuration of the API. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you my keys, but when you initialize, I get from that configuration the endpoint and the key. So the endpoint and the key, you can get it from your Azure OpenAI, and the endpoint is this, and the key is one of these. And then when you initialize your client, your client, you're going to use the endpoint in the API key, and that's how you instantiate your client. They I have them in a particular way on the app settings. Like I like creating groupings and sections, but basically that's how you uh, set up the client. All right, that's all I have, Mosen. I don't know
Thank
if
you,
you have
Ricardo.
some parting words.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That was great demo. Actually, I enjoyed. And we have a two comment. Maybe one things you share about that. The one comment here. Did you see on the screen?
um, I appreciate it.
Do you have any comment
Oh,
about this?
no, it seems like yeah, Scott. If you want to talk about this, just reach out. But yeah, it seems like the thing is evolving quite a bit. There is there is also like I'm using the AI part, like Azure AI, as an API. So there is also the Copilot Studio, right, which kind of
Yeah,
it's more low code kind of implementation of some of this. So there is two things that we can go and learn here. A lot of learning this way these days for sure.
yeah. And actually, as you know, I think this time is a gold time for AI. As you know, a lot of service engaged with AI.
Yeah.
And I suggest for all participants engage with AI. There are a lot of sample in the Microsoft document. They can work with them, and yeah, the AI. I think it's a gold time for AI.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm posting in here, it's my GitHub repository that has the code that I was sharing. So
Mhm.
basically, I had three branch, and they showed that progression from no function calling to local to API.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, thank you very much.
okay,
Uh, Thank you very much for accepting our invite. And if there is no question, I think there is no question. We can down end of the stream. And thanks, guys, for joining this event. And again, thanks, Ricardo.
all right.
Thank you. Bye bye.